Good morning, everybody. This is Walk the Dog with Riot Mort, and it's Friday. Friday. Always good to be Friday. Should be a quiet day for me. Yesterday, I worked on set 15, got the 2 and 3 costs done, then did some of the live stuff, prepping first pass on the patch, which, man, looking at our internal data, this patch is really good. I have not seen the lines this close on all the different costs. Like if you look at, 3-star 3 costs or 2-star 2 costs or whatever, like pick a cost, like all the lines are nice and balanced. If I had one criticism, it's like there's some reroll lines that are pretty hard to play compared to some of the 4 cost lines, but otherwise this patch is looking real good. So that's a great sign. But yeah, so happy Friday. Speaking of which, I said I was working on set 15, and one of the first questions today is, what the hell do you mean when you say, what is a set 15 deep dive? What does that mean? So, we're nearing the end of the set as far as development goes, because it goes live in like a month or two. Like 2 months? Yeah, 2 months. So, we're trying to get better at being ahead and things like that. Now, the team on TFT, we're all very good at our jobs. And, we have creative people who come up with really cool concepts like, ooh, wouldn't this neat 4 cost or 5 cost be cool? Whether it be Giovanni seeding some of the initial ideas, or like Sloan and his team coming up with cool ideas for everything to put it together and how the traits are going to work. And then as it approaches that end, Kent and his finalization team join, and they generally try to make sure it's all going to be healthy and do all that stuff. And that's all really good. But at the same time, trying to figure out the best way to put this, but things get missed. And my superpower is my familiarity with the game and my attention to detail. And so I'm basically like the final check where it's like, okay, let me look at this 1 cost tank. How does it work? What are the best items you would put on this? Does it all make sense? Are players going to understand this, right? Like I have pretty good player empathy over the years, or are players going to look at this and their brains get melted, And so a lot of the times, and this has been, I say the pass has been going good, most of the time I look at a champion, I'm like, yep, seems like this will work. This is cool, or this is basic, this is fine. And these numbers are very tunable. So if they're OP, we can buff their shield, or if they're underpowered or overpowered, we can, nerf whatever. And all of these make sense visually. It's all good, right? Like we can make this champion work, no problem. And I sign off on it. But occasionally I'll look at a champion. Like, for example, there was 1 cost in set 15. I'll look at this and I'm like, players are going to think you're supposed to build this, and that's stupid because it won't work. So what the hell do you want me to build here? Like, this is very unintuitive. Hey, guys, we need to fix this, and just really going through and making sure everything makes sense. Or another example might be, hey, I'm looking at this trait and you realize it's a 2, 3, 4, 5, but everyone's only going to play the 2-piece, right? Because the power from the 2-piece is insane, and so your numbers are off here. Or are you sure you can give this away on the 2-piece? I'm the final check before we really lock it in, because the goal here is we're trying to avoid having to rework anything, right? That's the worst, is when we ship something and then later we have to rework it. That's a clear miss. And so when I have time, I do these deep dives of okay, let's double check it. Now, long term, we're trying to develop a world where I'm not necessary, right? It's a weird thing in corporate America, but one of the things a leader is supposed to be doing is training the team so that they're not necessary, And so over time, I'm trying to train Giovanni and Kent and the finalization team. It's in the best case scenario, I look at a set at the end and I'm like, all looks good. Nothing I can add here. looking real solid. We're not quite there yet, but I will say set 15 is the closest I think we've been. But the other thing too, and to make sure I'm not just tooting my own horn here, sometimes I'm wrong too, right? Like for example, there was a 3 cost yesterday, and I was like, hey guys, this looks really, really weak, especially when you compare it to current live champion. These numbers look way off. I don't think that's, like, how's this working? Now, keep in mind, I'm not in as many playtests as them, so I'm like, I even call it out. I'm like, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's been strong in playtests, so maybe there's something I'm missing. So would love your guys' thoughts on this. And yesterday, for example, Victor, one of our GAT folks, reached out and was like, hey, I get why you think these numbers are weak, but you're not taking this into account. And it was actually like, no, yeah, you're right, Victor. Absolutely. You're right. I hadn't taken that into account. It is actually quite good. You're right. These numbers might be fine, So again, I'm not foolproof either, right? But that's having these discussions is healthy and improves the understanding of the set on every side, right? Like with the 1 cost, I was like, yep, we definitely need to address this. But with the 3 cost, I was like, nope, you guys are right. Totally. Right. And so like, that's that final check of just like really going through, double checking the quality of the set. Because, it's funny. I think this came up in one of the other questions I saw, but it's like, we don't have magical stats or simulations that are going to tell us if things are good or not, right? Like, there's nothing like that. Sometimes people on the team will try to like keep track of how the games go. But the other thing is our lobbies are also very skill discrepancy. Like you'll have a Nico who's been a former rank 1, me who's like mastered a challenger, and then sometimes you'll have the set lead who's like plat, So, you can only do so much with our internal team and internal testing, but that's where, again, these years of experience and these years of understanding, you deep dive on the things. And again, none of this is surprising, right? It's like we had the initial design, we had everything else going on, but yeah, so that's kind of what a deep dive is. And it's just one last final check on the design of the units, the quality of the units, everything's working as much as we can. And that's something I can provide to the team. And like I said, part of it though is I'm also not as equipped as the team. I haven't been playtesting quite as much as them. So, but like another example is actually, there was a 2 cost, and I'm looking at this 2 cost, I'm like, you're never going to 3-star this. I'm like, I'm fairly confident you will never 3-star this. And so that playtest I have, hey, Nico, why don't you play this today? And he goes, okay. And he plays it, and around 4-2, I have him 3-star, because we use cheats sometimes to like make sure it feels like you're hitting. I'm like, I want you to hit your 3-star this on 4-2. Like it's a good high roll, like great game. Okay, great. Well, he gets it on 4-2, and 4-3 he goes, huh, I think I might see the issue you're talking about. And sure, I think he went 4th that game. And then he wrote his feedback, and sure enough, his feedback was like, yep, here's this issue. We might need to do something about this. And I was like, yep, there it was. So, yeah. So like I said, sometimes I catch things that we need to fix. Sometimes I'm just wrong and being a little over, zealous. But overall, it improves the quality of the set and calls out issues that I think you guys as players will find. So, and I'm sure, by the way, I need to write this down because I just gave these like vague examples. Someone's going to ask me in 2 months, hey, when you said you were talking about that 2 cost, which champ were you talking about? So I need to write it down because otherwise I'm going to forget. I'm going to be like, what are you talking about? What 2 cost? I don't remember, because it all blurs together. So anyway, there you go. That's that question. Now, there's 2 more questions today. I'm going to do the short one first because the other one's long. And we'll just talk about that one for as long as I can go. Sorry. Okay. So this question was, hey, for set revivals, you said it will always be an X.5 because they're generally considered better than X.0s. Why is that? And I don't agree. 4.0 is way better than 4.5. Okay, so I think I was misquoted. I don't know that they'll always be 0.5s, but if you think about it from a set revival standpoint, you launch a set, right? Let's say you launch 8.0. And then over time, the live team fixes bugs, improves things, improves logic. Theoretically, the 0.5 should be the most polished, bug-free, healthy version of any set. And so when you're doing a revival, it would make sense to go, hey, let's take the most polished, fun version of each set. Now, historically, if you look at our 0.5s compared to our bases, most of them are improvements. And I've done this before on my tier list rundowns, but some of them are debatable. So like 3 versus 3.5, I think 3.5 is just better. But even in that example, there are some things that you lose in the from 3.0 that might have been your favorite, right? Maybe you really liked Gangplank from 3.0 and you're like, I really want to experience Gangplank. And so hearing this can really bum you out. 4 versus 4.5 is a really interesting one because 4 had some really cool stuff in it, but the theming of 4.5 is so popular in our eastern regions, especially, that like performance-wise, 4.5 crushed it. And so, it's hard to really justify going back to 4 sometimes. Now, there are 2 sets in my mind that I'm just like, nah, the 0.5s were downgrades. 6 versus 6.5, and then 9 versus 9.5. I think those are the ones where it's like 6 especially, you look at what we lost with like cool carries like Yone, and then you look at what we gained and it's like Striker, gain AD, woo, So who knows? That's really up to the set revival team. I think there's a world where the set revival team could take 6 over 6.5. We'll see. I hope someday, or, what's really cool, interesting is, so if I know you guys most of you who are watching this don't have access to this, but FFGS, they do set revivals quite a bit. And they've run the set 4 or 4.5, how you want to phrase it, set revival like 4 times now. And each time they actually try to like add a little spice to it. And one of the times what they did was at the start of the game, there's this like carousel that adds champions into the pool at 5 cost. Some of them were like 5 cost from other sets, like Ao Shen. And some of them were brand new 5 costs. Like they did the Lunar Rebel Sona that had its own like special abilities that could like manipulate your shop, kind of like Bard did. It's pretty cool. So, I don't know, I'm just brainstorming here. I'm literally making this up as I walk. This is not a planned thing. But like a world where it's like 4.5 revival, but there's ways to access some of the 4.0 champions. That could be kind of cool, But kind of like I talked about in a previous walk, that's just cost, right? Someone has to make those, design those, test those, things like that. And it'll be up to that team if they want to pay the cost, what are the product goals of that, things like that. So TLDR here is generally the team tries to launch the most polished version of the set. But I do think there are some exceptions where the 0.0 could go live. Now, I think in this thread, someone was like, yeah, I really want to see shadow items. Not sure you're ever going to get shadow items. I think it's really hard for us to look back on something that like, hey, most of our players really didn't like. And player numbers were going down significantly because of that mechanic. Let's bring it back in a revival. I think that's going to be a hard sell. But you never know. Or if it's done in a fun framework way. Or if we like, hey, we really want to bring them back. Maybe take another pass at them. But again, then it becomes less of a revival and more like a 2.0. So, I don't know. thankfully, a lot of the times, and this is what I mean by like my position on the team sometimes, we have product leads and our game director, like this is like Blue Velvet and Peter Whalen and stuff like that. They're the ones who eventually finally go, this is what we're going to do, right? We have made the decision to bring back shadow items. And then my job is to go, now that we've made that decision, let's execute on it. Let's do it. Let's make sure it's good. Let's get everything going. Here's how you need to make it work. Here's how shadow items need to work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's my job. So, yeah. All right. We are at 15 minutes, which leaves a lot of time for the big meaty question. And I wrote it down, but the phrasing was very long. But it's like, basically the question is, what's the process of making new sets? And this is a long one. And who knows, maybe I get in trouble for this because someone's going to be like, you're revealing all company secrets. Not really, but let me do my best to sum up the process. And keep in mind, it's a messy year-long process. So I'm not going to get every detail in here in this 15-minute walk, you know? But let me see what I can do here. So generally, you know, let's fast forward. We're talking about set 18, 19, 20, 21, right? The first thing we have to do is figure out the theme. Now, the theme is generally figured out via this nice long roadmap, and you're looking for obvious catch-alls, right? Like, for example, if right after set 13, we were like, set 14 is going to be a Runeterra set. Well, that would be silly, because set 13 is basically a Runeterra set. So going Runeterra into Runeterra would be really, really bad. Likewise, if we went, hey, after set 4, we're going to do a dragon set for set 5. That would be really bad because it's like high fantasy set into high fantasy set. Not so great, right? So a lot of the times this roadmap will be planned out to create sort of variation within those themes. So, you know, after set 3, which is space theme, you get set 4, which is, you know, like fantasy Eastern theme. And then set 5, which is like dark gritty. And then set 6, which is like Runeterra Arcane. It's like, you want to have that variety. And so whatever we plan out in the roadmap, we'll take it into account that variety, right? And so it's like, okay, and I'm going to use fake things here because we're not shipping this as long as I live. You know, let's say we go, okay, set 16 is the Runeterra set. So set 17 needs to be lighthearted and goofy. So we're going to do food fight tactics on 17. And then since we did lighthearted, set 18 needs to be dark and epic. So we're going to do the all black unit set because it's edgy and dark. Okay, great, right? Like that's how we plan that. So we start out with the theme. Great. So now for set 17, we've said food fight tactics. We pick our set lead. So let's say our set lead is going to be Kent. Kent, you're set leading set 17, the food fight tactics theme. Great. And we'll try to pick a set lead that's generally excited by the theme. You know, Kent really loves cinnamon rolls. So Kent, you're going to do food fight tactics. Great. So now Kent will work with the team that we've given him, as well as Giovanni, who's our lead of sets, as well as me a little bit. And we will start paper structuring the set. So this is where you start gathering all the possible skin lines, right? So let's say we take every food fight themed skin line, we gather them all up, we see how many we've got. And sometimes like, okay, a Runeterra set, right? Like, well, we know we have every champion, plenty, we'll be fine. But food fight tactics, we might be like, ooh, we only have like 58 skins that we're feeling really comfortable with. So we're going to have to get creative and we're going to have to figure out how we're going to like add some stuff. Or, hey, we have these 58, halfway point, but we also have these, we have these 58, but we also have these 30 that are like debatably not food fight tactics, but maybe we could get away with it, you know, that like brush the line. And that's how you sometimes end up with skins. You're like, why is this skin in the set? I don't know, but they kind of needed something. We'll then work with Art to be like, hey, Art, which ones are you guys excited about? Which ones do you think? Because our art team is really good. People like Tori are really good at building out the thematics of the set. because they're going to be the ones that are going to come up with like, what's the general plot of the set, working with Kent, the set lead. And again, this is all hypothetical examples. We're not actually making the set. So we'll get all that figured out. Then once you have this pool of available skins and champions, it's time to play Jenga. And what I mean by that is it's time to go, okay, and you usually start with origins, but you're like, what's going to be the centerpiece origin for this set? So maybe for Food Fight Tactics, it's the cutie cafes, right? You're like, cool, who are our cutie cafe champions? Let's start with them. And you'll lay them out and you'll be like, all right, well, we need tanks. What are the tanks costs going to be? Well, we'll put a tank at 4 costs and a tank at 1 or 2 costs and make sure we have that. And then it's like, oh, you might run into a problem where it's like, ooh, Cutie Cafes is 4 tanks and 3 damage dealers. Ugh. Well, Jarvan's one of the tanks. So yes, there's Cutie, I'm making this up. There's Cutie Cafe Jarvan. Cutie Cafe Jarvan is going to be a melee bruiser, not a tank this set. Okay, cool. And you fill that out. And then as you start, so it's like you fill out Cutie Cafes and then you fill out barbecue, whatever, and you start filling out these origins. And then what'll happen is as you're building this out, you'll realize like, oh crap, we don't have enough AP casters. We're going to have to move this around. Or, oh God, our 4 costs there's not enough tanks in 3 costs. Let's move this around, right? We have essentially the holes to fill of what makes a good TFT set. And we're essentially playing this almost like Sudoku Jenga-like puzzle of like trying to make sure everything fits in the right slot. Okay, cool. That can take a bit. You have to get creative sometimes. You have to move things around. But once you have that, so let's say we've fast forwarded and you have that, you've got these 60 champions. They're all in the right slots. You've all got the right costs. Great. Now it's time to build the kits, right? So it's like you start with, okay, in our Cutie Cafes, we have a 1 cost Jarvan. Well, what does 1 cost Jarvan do? Well, he needs to be a melee bruiser who uses Sterix Titans BT. So we want him to scale off AD and AP and do AD damage. And he's a 1 cost, so he has to be simple. So with Jarvan, we will do just a big poke, keep it simple. Or, this is where we use the champions kits to try to fill out these holes that we've created. Then as we do that, we might go, hey, we have Jarvan in the set who's doing this 1 cost poke, and we have Aatrox in the set who uses the exact same items and also does a stab at 1 cost. Those are too similar. So Jarvan needs to change. And we'll look at the rest of the set. Like every decision is made in context of the rest of the set to figure out what the right design is. And we'll keep going round and round with these designs. And keep in mind, this process usually takes about 2 to 3 weeks. Maybe a little less if your team's getting real fast. But, trying to fill these all out. And then we'll do a pass for it. So it's like it's all filled out. All the champion kits are there. And then it'll be like, ooh, we have too many Shojin users. Or, ooh, too much backline access has been a common one where it's like, we look at a set and we're like, holy crap, 12 of these champions can do damage to your carry. That's not good. We need to change that skill. And again, we do this all on paper until we have something that we're like really comfortable with. And we're looking at this and we're like, yep, this looks about as good as we can get it, we think, on paper. Then comes what I would call one of the harder parts, where the team goes off and they use our internal tools and they start building the set. And this is a time-consuming process. The League of Legends engine is a little old, but we, put a champion in the set, build it, make sure it works, pick the right animations, make sure, like, part of being a TFT designer is also the combat feel and making sure like animations flow well. And this is something like, honestly, there's still some room for improvement on the team. But, making sure the animation happens and that the damage procs right when it should in the animation and lining all that up. So that's actually like the biggest chunk of work is getting it implemented. Writing all the tooltips, setting that all up. So like that paper version is only like 2 to 3 weeks. Whereas the implementation can be as long as like 3 or 4 months. It takes a while to build a set. Something we'll do in there as well is we will do what's called I forget what we call it, but it's like the moveless version, where what you do is you put all the champions in the game, but none of them do anything. They don't cast, they don't auto attack. You just like have put the shop cards in, and then you play a game where you're just like, I'm going to build a comp. And then again, you don't actually have to watch the combats, but it's like, was building the comp good? Or did you find yourself avoiding certain champions? You know, so it's like, hey, as we did this play test, we ran through this like 6 times, and no one was ever touching Jinx. Like, she was a trait bot and street demon, but no one ever picked her as their carry. It's like, ooh, okay, we might have a problem there. You know, you start getting really familiar with your sets and the intricacies of how players will interact with it, how players will build it, things like that. After that implementation, and it gets all in, we start playtesting. And this is where you play, basically the way this works is every morning we playtest the game. You'll find bugs, you'll find balance issues, you'll find things that are just like, huh, this doesn't work. Like literally yesterday in playtest, it was like, hey, this stat on this trait wasn't functioning. Oh, that's weird. It used to function. I wonder what happened. And, you know, because again, building games and programming is complicated and things go wrong. And you'll keep doing that. And that's basically how it goes for a while. It's like playtest, find an issue, iterate. Now, the thing I also didn't cover there's one other big curveball here. I'm still recording, great. Is the mechanic. Mechanics have become probably the hardest part of set development because we've done a lot of the obvious stuff. So a lot of the times when we first were doing that paper draft, we'll also come up with a mechanic. For example, with set 15, we had an idea for a mechanic. And then as we did the playtests, we went, this isn't as fun as we thought it'd be. You know, and I'll blame myself here. I was actually one of the ones excited about the 15 mechanic. It wasn't as fun. And we're like, man, everyone who's playtesting this is like really struggling with this mechanic. And it's just not working. So what we'll do is we'll find ourselves in a situation where it's like, oh crap, we have to come up with a different set mechanic. And so using 15 as the example, we tried a different mechanic. It's like, not that great. Okay, what about this one? Yeah, better. We're on the right track. Okay, what about this one? Oh, okay, actually, this is really cool, you know. And I'm making it sound like we're just like throwing darts at a wall, but it's a little more involved than that. I can only give you so many details. And then we get a mechanic we're happy with. Sometimes, you know, I'll use set 10 as an example. We had a mechanic. We tried to get it to work. It didn't work. We tried to get it to work. It didn't work. We ran out of time and we went, well, we're out of time. Time to use a known good. Let's bring back Chosen. You know, sometimes we have to fall back to a known good we haven't used in a while. And so like set 10's original mechanic just didn't quite work out. So we ended up with Chosen. It happens, you know. And this is part of us being adaptable because like we can't shift our schedules. We're not going to like not ship set 10 because we couldn't come up with a good mechanic, you know. But mechanics are the hard part and often can take an entire designer's time. Shout out to Matt Dunn, who's worked on mechanics a lot lately. But yeah. And so, like I said, you get all that, you get it playtesting, you're doing the iterative loop, you're doing the polish loop, you're adding things. And this is also the fun part too, where it's just like, you'll have a designer one day who's like, I'm working on this champion. Wouldn't it be fun if as an Easter egg, we did this? And everyone on the team's like, yeah, that'd be so cool. And then we just do it, you know? And then there's a cool Easter egg in the game because the team's just having fun and vibing and making cool stuff. So yeah, throughout there, there's stuff I skipped, right? Like somewhere in there, we'll do a lab. For example, we had an idea for a set 14 mechanic. It got implemented a little roughly. And then we did a player lab. Players hated it. So it was like, oh crap, we got to do a different mechanic because no one higher up wants to ship a mechanic that tested so poorly in a player lab. We got to do it again, you know? So every day you're adapting to new changing information. Or another example would be like, hey, while we're working on set 15, we learned players hate this about set 14. Have you guys got any of that in set 14? If so, you might want to consider changing it. Ooh, yeah, good point. And so, you might go like, ooh, well, we should probably change this 1 and 2 cost so that we don't run into that same issue and players aren't responding the same way due to new information we just got. Okay, cool. We should probably handle that. And so that's why you're kind of like changing on the fly. It's one of those things that like production wishes we could like lock a set 6 months in advance and just not touch it. But TFT is a game where we have to develop pretty adaptively. So yeah, hopefully this gave you the answer you were kind of looking for. Again, I know I'm really going high level here and only talking about it in 15 minutes. I'm sure each, set designer could talk to you for about an hour on the various things they struggle with or the things they run into. There's working with the various teams. There might be an engineering challenge, memory budgets, animation sizes, UX challenges where they're like, hey, we want to do this thing. Well, there's no really good way to represent that. Is there a better way to, all sorts of game design challenges that I'm not going to bore you with. But that's kind of what it goes into to develop a set. So, yeah. All right, cool. Video's 31 minutes and it actually recorded the whole time. I think I figured out the problem that was cutting off my videos earlier, hopefully. So hopefully we don't run into that again. Cool. All right, well, it is Friday. Not a ton of weekend plans. I will say I'm starting to miss streaming. Like I said, it was a hobby. And so like when you stop doing your hobby, it kind of feels bad. I don't know. We'll see. I'm definitely enjoying the break to some extent, right? Sleeping in a little bit, not thinking about that. But like, we have the new items. And for my job's sake, wouldn't it be great if I was logging on this weekend and making some viewer games and testing new items and showing that new Ginsu's is actually pretty cool and everyone who's worried about it doesn't need to be that worried, and showing how Ginsu Sinna is actually pretty good? Wouldn't that be cool? But instead, might just hang out, watch a movie, there's some other games I need to try too, I've seen. So, we'll see. Okay, hopefully you've enjoyed this episode of Walk the Dog. The other thing I'm still toying with is I don't know. I feel like the Discord's still a little too hidden. I kind of wonder if again, I know a lot of you said I probably shouldn't make these videos public, but I don't know. I might try. Oh, also my actual birthday is in 6 days. I'm going to be 42. Holy cow. So, yeah. All right. I'm going to stop boring you. I'm walking uphill. I'm going to start running out of breath. You guys are going to mock me. So, there you go. Hopefully you have a great day. Great weekend. Enjoy. Love you guys. I appreciate everyone who watches these. You guys are the real OG fans. I appreciate all you. All right. That's going to do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.